What's up? Thanks for tuning in into my GRAVIDIA deck profile. I will do now for set 3. If you are new to GRAVIDIA or even own a GRAVIDIA deck and you want to see how I played, what are my thoughts, you're at the right video, since I will go through the key cards. Since there aren't many, since you will play so many meteors, your deck will only be triggers and meteors, and that's what's beautiful about GRAVIDIA. First of all, I want to show you possible deck lists with the GRAVIDIA build if you want to start your own career as a rock-throwing space monster with style. First list you see here is the standard build where people play 12 to 14 meteors, so you can put more rear guards in it, since if you play 16 meteors there is not much space to put rear guards in, and that's your weakness. Second list I will not show right now is 16 meteors. That's for the SP hunters who want to play 16 SP meteors for the money beasts, and I wouldn't recommend to run 16 meteors, but if you really want to, it's about personal preference. Just go for it, but keep in mind that you have less rear guards in it, and when the opponent focuses on rear guards, you will run out of steam pretty quickly. Key to the 12 to 16 meteors build is to survive as long as you can and throw as many rocks at your opponent as you can, and to filter through your deck and searching all of the meteors to then have a deck consistent of mostly meteor stuff. Your deck consists mostly of triggers, and then you can use 5 meteors to burst him with possible 2 checks with triggers, so that's 4 triggers right into the face. But most of the time you will just use 3 meteors in the beginning to create some pressure, to put him on a good damage number so that he will be lethal all the time. And the second list is the crazy GRAVIDIA build, which is the most meta relevant in my opinion. I will go on full detail later after I have gone through the first list. You can see here this timestamp to skip right to the part of the GRAVIDIA Orpheus Line. In all those lists there is an interesting tech, and that's Twisting Bulldoze. This card is so good since it allows you to reach magic numbers very easy, and even your GRAVIDIA wealth has now a meaning with the 10k boost. When you attack the opponent and you have more rear guards than they do, which is pretty easy in GRAVIDIA since you nuke the field most of the time, so you can counterblast to soul charge 1 and get 10 additional K on your rear guard. And that's why wealth is amazing, since you can boost him to 10k, and when then your bulldoze attacks without persona right, he's on 33k without any triggers. So that means a 20k shield is exactly not enough, which forces the opponent to use 2 15k shields or a variation of smaller shields. That's why I don't play many GRAVIDIA Stanner or Beringer, cause you will be at 15k most of the time, and with your booster you will only get to 23k. And to get to 23k you need 2 cards, and with Twisting Bulldoze you're standalone on 23k, which creates just more value out of your hand. But nevertheless, Stanner is still a pretty good card. It's a 10k shield, and 50k is also not the baddest thing to have, especially since it's also 15k on the enemy's turn, so he can just attack into it with a 10k rear guard or something like that. So there's also value in Stanner. And the best thing about Twisting Bulldoze is you don't need any of your counterblasts. Right now you exactly need one per turn, and this gives you some extra space to put some counterblasts in it. So just add it. I think it's a perfect card right now for GRAVIDIA till we get set 4 support, and I will go into that another video. You can of course cut Twisting Bulldoze if you want a more defensive route of the deck, since if you cut the Bulldoze you can put in more Stanners, more of the boosters, and even maybe more meteors. Then you are playing a more slow build of the deck, and you are trying to grind your opponent out of resources since you don't need any resources. Only problem is you will go out of deck, and that's there is deck counting very important. And you want to grind out the game till to the very late game, since you won't die. Only moment you will die with this deck is going deck out through taking too much damage. And I can't count how many times I had to guard with 3 damage in damage zone just because I had only like 4 to 5 cards in my deck, and if I would have taken 2 damage I couldn't have attacked with my Vanguard anymore. So keep that in mind and always count your deck as a Gravidia player. And now we will go over the Meteor and trigger management. In both builds, so this the first and the second one I will come to, you always have to count your meteors. Meteor counting is very important to always know how many meteors are in my deck, in my damage zone and drop. And maybe soul, it can happen. It's very essential to have a view of how many meteors are left in deck so you can use your Gravidia's Nordlinger skills properly. And you have to count how many times you wanna do 3 meteor skills and if you really want to do the 5 meteor skills. This question is generally more easier to say in the standard 14 to 16 or 12 to 16 Gravidia build. Just keep that in mind that if you have like a lot of meteors in damage zone, save your meteors that are in hand. Then to the triggers. In the standard build, I play fronts, of course, 8 crits. I play 8 crits, 3 fronts and 4 heals. I thought maybe at the time putting 4 fronts and only 3 heals in it, but heals are just too good, man. Can't cut them out. And fronts are for that reason, since your rearguards are pretty weak if you don't play Twisting Bulldoze. That's where Twisting Bulldoze comes in. Even with a front it just gets so much bigger and bigger, it's crazy. In the other build, in the Vert build, I play draws, since that is a very aggressive deck and you need the draws at the beginning if they are checked, and fronts aren't really necessary. They're good, but draws are just better. And now speaking of the Vert build, we're now coming to this beauty. I'm playing this at Bro, since it's a very good matchup against Lowro and Bruce, even Bastion, but Bastion not that great since it can also be explosive on his turn 3. So if he starts, keep some shields in hand or you're gonna get really yeah, fucked, just say it, Jesus, you're just dead. The overall game plan of this build is to aggro your opponent out of oblivion. In the first 3 turns you want to have him on like 4 to 5 damage, and you have a very aggressive G2 turn where we will come later to, and that's the whole point of this deck. You won't survive much longer than your 5th turn, since you will go out of deck and out of resources. So this is a hyper aggro blast everything deck, and it's really strong against, like I said, current matchups. I played the Office Ride line cause the grade 1 can search you the order to create a Shadow Army token, and the grade 2 gives you additional 5k power. And these 5k power are very important to reach the 20k mark. When you attack with your Vanguard and the opponent doesn't guard and gets a defensive trigger, you won't get over with your rearguards except they are 20k or higher. When you start and you're in your turn 2, your opponent's Vanguard will be at 8k, and if you went second, your opponent's Vanguard will be 10k. So each defensive trigger boosts them to 18 or 20k, which means you have to have a heavy rearguard column with at least 20k so that you can aggro the opponent, and the opponent won't probably discard any cards or shield, since they won't have more than 1 trigger usually, and they don't want to waste their rearguards for not taking damage. Okay, now we are here. We already took 1 damage. First turn we played Meteor, since this is very essential, and we soul charged Wells. So we have 2 soul right now, but now we are riding, and we also searched Eclipsed Moonlight. So we discard the heal trigger to ride Cubizo. After that we can play the Vert Order, counterblasting 1 to get a Shadow Army token, and the Shadow Army token gets additional 5k. There we go. And now we like to play Beringer, and cause we have 3 soul now, since we played 1 meteor at the beginning, we can Soul Blast 3 to draw a card, and it gets additional 5k. which means when we put down Bubble Mine, we reach 23k, and we have reached the 20k mark. Now let's go to Bubble Mine. Bubble Mine is an important card in your deck since it gives you a counter charge. If you ask why, since you don't need that many counter blasts, except you will go into Nordlinger skill and 2 Twisting Bulldoze, then you will need 3. But that rarely happens. The reason behind Bubble Mine is to help you with possible damage denial. Not everybody knows this build of the deck, so they will just attack into your Vanguard. But if they attack into rearguards and you don't get any damage, you will sit on your 1 damaged, on your 1 used up damage, and can't use Nordlinger skill on your 3rd turn, and that's very important in your deck that you can use at least your Nordlinger. And that's why I run Bubble Mine. In this list you will see just 2. I'm thinking about pumping it up to 3, but other than that Bubble Mine isn't that great, but I think there is a place for a 3rd one and cutting a 1 wells down, since you can also use up the soul with Beringer, so it's not that bad of an addition. And GRAVIDIA Whales has a very important placement on your rearguard list. Since Whales can get to 10k, and that's very important, you can put him behind Twisting Bulldoze as we speak at the beginning of this video, so he gets an additional 10k and meets magical numbers. Magical numbers is this deck, important. And Whales can be put behind Nordlinger, then your Nordlinger will always be on 38 without Persona. Since 13 plus 15 from the skill, it's on 28, and plus 10, 38. Which creates a really awkward number to guard with normal trigger units, and they will just PG everything from the start if they have enough PGs. But even if they PG, you just put on your triggers on your rearguards and then you're fine to go, since every column will be at least 23k or something like that, so no problem. And the thing I forgot about Beringer is next bonus plus point for Beringer. Since you're on 15k, you can also put a trigger behind it to boost it, so it gets to the 20k. And it may seem stupid, but I did that a lot, and it really pays off, especially if you got a draw trigger in hand, which is only a 5k shield. But I put down heal triggers, critical triggers, just not the over trigger. And that makes the deck a little bit more consistent, since you don't rely to always have an 8k booster. And it's even really nice to put down a trigger behind your Nordlinger, since it also creates a nice number with 33, which means if they put 30k shield down to 15k shield, they are only on 43, so it's still a 1 to pass, so they have to guard with a front and then with a 15k shield. So every boost to your Nordlinger is just very welcome. As you see, everything in this deck is very well calculated. And since your game plan is very easy to execute, after just some games you will have a very clear understanding of how to play this deck. And the next plus point about an easy game plan, about an easy concept, if you play in a bigger tournament like Bro, you have easy deck, you can't do many misplays, and there's only exactly 1 misplay which always does happen, and that is not to forget to use your f***ing whale skill. Since the 2k bonus is important in this deck, it gives you magical numbers. And in these bigger tournaments, just easy to pilot, you won't get a headache after like 5 to 7 rounds, like I know from my Yu-Gi-Oh experience when I played at the YCS for 10 hours straight. So I know for sure easy decks are the more competitive decks in bigger tournaments, since you don't get burned out that quick. That's why low row is also pretty good, since you just turn 4, splash everything and swing for game. Now let's go over the Meteor management for this deck specifically. We have gone over it for the general 12 to 16 Meteor builds, and how to do it and to count it. That's also very important in this deck, but which is more important is that you have to count how you wanna play the Meteor game this for your game, since you only have 10 Meteors, which means if you, let's say, get every single one into order zone and none go into drop or into damage zone or into soul, then you could use 1 times the 5 meteor skills and then only 1 time the 3 meteor skills, and then you can use 2 times the single meteor skill. Since your game plan is to not survive longer than your 4th turn, you will just use your meteor skills probably twice. So if you have a lot of meteors in hand and you have 5, go first for the 3 meteors, except you think you won't live that long, and go for your 4th turn with the 5 meteors, since you will thin out your deck more with the persona rights. Otherwise, if you don't draw a lot of meteors, you can go with the 3 meteor skills and then again with the 3 meteor skills, so you have 4 meteors left to spare to be in the damage zone, to be in soul, or to even discard for riding. Then, last section, after this we're done, and that's Mulligan. A mulligan for the first deck list will be pretty easy, just keep personas, PGs and rearguards in hand, mulligan everything back. For the second list it's a little bit more... it's a little bit more complicated, since you have to have a persona right, so keep your persona right if you have one. Keep 1 meteor in hand, since you will need that if you play the Beringer deck list, and then keeping 1 Beringer in hand or Twisting Bulldoze is also pretty good, since you want to push then on your turn 3 for a move with the Twisting Bulldoze, and Beringer you will use on your 2nd turn. And if you have Wells or Bubble Mine, I would keep Bubble Mine, not Wells, since Bubble Mine gives you the CC, so you don't get damage denied, which is pretty good. If you have a Beringer, worst case you can call down a trigger to boost it to 20k, otherwise just put the Bubble Mine behind Beringer, so you can counter charge, which is really good. So I have gotten to the end of this video. I hope you stayed till here, and if you did, I hope you have learned a lot about GRAVIDIA, and I hope you enjoy the playstyle of the different builds we have right now. English good. Tell me in the comments down below if you enjoyed this more structured deck profile, or if you like just a quick one where I pew and it's done, or if you like to go if I go more in depth. So thanks for watching and don't get over triggered.